and shouted at each other. Without the gun being pointed at her head, she didn't feel any great hurry to get the task done. Wearing a fierce expression, the second soldier marched over to her and suddenly jerked the shovel from her hand, gesticulating wildly at the first soldier. When their voices rose, she took advantage of the break to retreat from the two men. If they decided to shoot each other, she didn't want to be anywhere near them. Fieldwork in Africa, in the Middle East, and in the Asian subcontinent had made her all too familiar with how fast a poor situation could get worse. The argument escalated, and she warred with watching the two men and keeping her head down. This wasn't her first rodeo with gun-wielding bullies. A lowered gaze reduced her threat level. That her life experience included being threatened by everything from military juntas to scavengers, pirates, and rebels should probably tell her she needed a new line of work. At least she'd had more than one friend suggest she went looking for trouble. Perhaps true, but it was also the downside of what happened when a person was invested in trying to save the world. Maybe she couldn't really save the world, but she could save people. She had saved them. Inoculations, rebuilding decimated villages, transporting refugees, searching for survivors. And today? Today, she'd held a terrified little boy's hand so he didn't have to face this nightmare alone. With another snarled invective, the second soldier flung the shovel into the poorly dug grave, then seized her by the arm. His fingers biting into her flesh hurt like hell. When he dragged her away, she tempered the brief flare of elation. She had no guarantee wherever he took her would be better. Bits of foliage snapped at her legs as they cut through the jungle. Even though she hurried to keep up, he kept increasing his pace. When they reached the village, she studied the collection of mud brick huts surrounding a central fire pit. It had a tribal feeling to it, hastily constructed and using only local materials. No women or children were visible, just more guerrilla soldiers like the one dragging her, a couple of pigs, and one very sad-looking cow. The sun-heated ground left little waves rising in the air, shimmering and waving. Her captor dragged her right up to one of the little buildings, opened the door, then flung her inside. She landed on the dirt floor. The torn skin on her knee opened up, and pain jarred through her. The door slammed closed, with him on the other side of it, leaving her alone in the hot building.
"Is it you?"
Colin's horrified voice reached her. When she pushed herself up, she turned in the direction of the voice, then suddenly found herself with an armful of little boy. Wrapping his arms around her neck, he held on fiercely.
"Hey, kiddo. Sorry about that. They wanted to see if I was any good at gardening."
Keeping the quip light would hopefully alleviate his fear, even if it didn't do much for hers.
"They're going to kill you."
Colin's voice trembled and climbed. He wasn't old enough to have gone through the voice-cracking changes of puberty, and she was determined he be allowed to live long enough to endure the perils of said development.
"Not today," she assured him.
Faking confidence she could do. Fake it until she could make it.
"What about you? Are you okay?"
She couldn't really assess his condition in the dusty gloom of the cabin. What windows the place had were closed over by shutters. It stunk of urine, sweat, and what she could only describe as fear.
"Really hungry?"
Colin complained.
"And there's water in the corner, but it's nasty."
Water in the corner, really? They could both use some fresh water right about now. Her lips were dry and cracked. With all the sweating, she hadn't had anything to replace the fluid she was losing. In the short term, that was okay. In the longer term, dehydration could do wicked things to the body and mind.
"We'll take a look at it, shall we?"
She rose on shaky feet, and Colin helped. He wouldn't release her hand, maybe desperate for the security that contact with a stranger provided. Though they really weren't strangers anymore, were they? She was a friendly face in the hellish destruction erupting into his safe life. She understood the need. They'd faced fear once, they could do it again. Hand in hand.